Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are here in Slovakia for the penultimate round of the 2023 ESET Cup Series, and with that also the penultimate round of the Renault Clio Cup. It is not the first time that we're racing in Slovakia with Clios this season, and I do not mean that it's Sunday and we've already had a race yesterday. That is of course true as well, but the Renault Clio Cup is the only championship of the ESET Cup Series ensemble that came also for the first round here in Slovakia earlier on this year in June, because we've got split event here in Slovakia. Some of the championships have already been here back in June. Some of them are coming for the Slovakian Grand Prix now mid-August. Either way, the Clio's already on the starting grid, and that means that we are ready to go racing. My name is Pavel Fabry, I'm your commentator for the weekend as usual, and the Clio Cup, this is the order in which they will start this race. It is of course the same as it was at the end of yesterday's race. That's what is usual. We do not reverse numbers of positions as we used to in the past. Now it's simply the order that was valid at the end of yesterday's race, and that means that so far the dominant driver Martin Kadlecik is again on pole position. He has already won 9 out of 9 races. Everything that that there was to win, he did, and it was the same story yesterday in the race number 1, and that means that the white car, the Mark IV Clio number 301, is on pole position once again. Alongside him, his German opponent Michael Hulm, who still has a mathematical chance to snatch the title away from him, but of course today's race must really go in a dramatic fashion towards Michael Hulm in order for that to be true. If not, then Martin Kadlecik will be crowned this season's champion. Similar story in the Mark V Clios, where Tomáš Pekař scored yet another victory yesterday, and if he repeats the same feat today, then there is nothing else everyone can still do, and that would mean that we would have the champion in both of the categories that we have in the Renault Clios. Car number 101, the orange Clio, that was Tomáš Pekař very briefly, and Tomáš Pekař is actually sharing the second row of the grid with Adam Konopka, the local hero. Adam Konopka, local driver in the colors of ARC Bratislava, and we have him on row number 2 in 3rd position. And Adam Konopka definitely putting to use his experience. This is it, the traditional ensemble of the ARC Bratislava, a big team, local team. Not only with the Clio here, of course, you know them also from the GT racing with the Lamborghini Huracan for Zdeno Mikuláško this weekend, and of course Miro Konopka, Adam's dad, in his LMP3 Ligier in the D5 class. We'll see them a little later on after the lunch break. But now it is Adam who scored a podium finish yesterday, and he might as well do the same thing today. He didn't have the best of starts. That means that he had to play catch up quite a lot during the race, which means that if he makes a better getaway today, he would position himself much better to actually fight the other 2 guys in the Mark IV Clios that are on the grid right ahead of him. Row number 3, that is Szabolcs Lantos, Hungarian driver in the colors of Karpek Service Racing Team, and alongside him Nick Stefancic, the reigning Renault Twingo Cup champion from the past 2 seasons. Then row number 4, that's Ivan Mandic and David Malinkovsky, and completing the top 10 are Miha Primožič and Henrik Seibel, yesterday's drivers and, let's say, fighting protagonists who entertained us quite a lot for the majority of the race when they overtook one another here and there. They even had little bumps here and there, and they are still together on the starting grid, which only promises that they will present us with yet more wonderful fighting in today's race. Once again, Miha Primožič, of course, yesterday's birthday boy. Or I should rather say birthday man. P11 Ondrej Fekete, home driver, and alongside him Dejan Robida, and in P13 Radoslav Obertal. We've lost one car already, Petar Miloradovic, who got a very nasty hit yesterday in the race, and that car was beyond repair for today's race, which means we do not have him on the grid for race number 2, and we've also lost Jiří Zbožinek, who was unable to continue this weekend. He already had issues at Most after the crash in the second race. He basically bent the beam underneath the bumper and damaged the radiator, which caused the engine to overheat, and of course the damage was then too big. He was trying to get everything back together for the Slovakia ring round as well, but he has had to skip both races eventually in the end. Drivers are now off to the formation lap, 5,922 meters. That is the length of the track, one of the longest, or one of the longer ones on the calendar. And that, of course, means also rather slower lap times, or let's say longer lap times. About 2.5 minutes it takes for a Renault Clio to complete a lap. Actually, just under that by a couple of seconds. So championship standings, I already mentioned that Tomáš Pekař is the leader of the Mark V class, Martin Kadlecík the leader of the Mark IV class, and also the leader overall. The scoring system is a little bit different between the two classes. In the Mark Vs you have always 25 points for a race victory. In the Mark IV it's usually 12.5, so half of it. And of course that means that in the Mark V class you can score as many as 50 points for victories, plus points for fastest laps and the qualifying wins, and 25 points across the weekend for the Mark IV category. And that means that should the gap between the first and second be greater than that at the end of this race, we will be crowning champions. And as I already mentioned, both Tomáš Pekař and Martin Kadlecík took class victories in their respective categories in yesterday's race, which only moved them closer to the overall victory. And if everything goes just like yesterday, or at least similarly like yesterday, then there is then no dispute, and they will be crowned champions with one race weekend to spare. So the drivers are now making their way around the final corner. It's the never-ending right-hander, even more than 100 degrees around the heliport and past the pit lane entry, and then back towards the starting grid. Everyone will be then slotting in their respective positions. So it is Martin Kadlecík and Michael Hulm on the first row, Adam Konopka and Tomáš Pekař, row number 2, Szabolcs Lantos and Nick Stefančič, row number 3, Ivan Mandić, David Malinkovský, row number 4, Miha Primožič, Henrik Seibel, row number 5. Behind them, Ondrej Fekete, Dejan Robida and Radoslav Obertal. Everyone taking their positions on the grid. Just the last checks from the track marshal. Everything good to go green. So the green flag is in the air, which means we can start with the lights procedure. It's taking a little bit longer. Is there an issue with that? Now the lights go red. And we are away in Slovakia. The race is underway. Martin Kadlecík from pole position, immediately trying to see where Michael Hulm is, and he cover him off on the inside of the track, but managing it just barely. Michael Hulm still holding that key position on the inside. Is he going to try a move? Yes, he is. And they are now running side by side, but still Martin Kadlecík keeping better momentum through the first corner, and keeping the first place. Tomáš Pekař up to third. as he's dealt with Adam Konopka. It's still not the perfect start for Adam Konopka, but a much better getaway than yesterday. Yesterday he dropped somewhere to P6 and had to climb back up the order through quite a lot of positions. Now he's only got Tomáš Pekář to deal with, and he will be back together with the Mark IV class opponents once again. Nick Stefancic up to 5th as he's done an overtake on Szabolcs Lantos. We then have Mandic and Malinkovsky fighting together for 7th and 8th. Cars number 23 and 222. This is the Titan Twist infield section. So we are now winding right and immediately left. This is the slowest part of the track here in Slovakia. Adam Konopka already slotting behind Tomáš Pekář. He will be trying to use the slipstream behind the orange Clio as soon as the opportunity comes. Hard under braking across the crest to another very tight left-hander, which slowly gets you towards the last sector of the track. Winding around once again. And Kadlecik leading from Hulm and Tomáš Pekář. Adam Konopka losing touch a little bit with Pekář, and he's now rather coming under pressure from Stefancic, as everyone is now navigating around the final corner. Stefancic skillfully slotting in behind Konopka, and he will be able to use his slipstream as we are now coming across the line and down the pit straight. After the opening lap of the race, Kadlecik leading from Hulm, Pekář, Konopka 4th, Stefancic 5th, Lantos 6th. And then Mandic and Malinkovsky, Michal Primožič staying ahead of Henrik Seibel. And actually he isn't. The live timing only got updated now, and Seibel is actually through and into P9 ahead. This is Ondrej Fekete, and ahead of him Michal Primožič, who's dropped to P10 right now. Through the right-hander we go. That's turn number 3, very difficult one. It's the first really hard braking spot on the circuit. The first corner also heavy braking zone, but turn number 3, that's the one that you really need to be careful about. A look at the lockups. As drivers in this infield section, they're basically turning and braking at the same time. They're trying to actually make their trajectory as straight as possible, which is not very easy because the track simply keeps turning away from you. So you have to do a bit of both, and through that it is just easy to lock your wheel. And as you're cornering really flat, you're kicking the inside rear wheel up in the air anyway, and then the brakes stop it immediately, and as the car is bouncing, it's basically rubbing the tire against the surface, and that is causing yet more lockups. Martin Kadlecik already trying to make a break for it. There he is, enjoying a couple of seconds of advantage at this stage, while Tomáš Pekář, he's shaken off the pressure from Konopka. So, of course, he's now having other thoughts, and they are more forward-oriented, as he's now slipstreaming past Michael Hulm. There we go across the line for the second time. No slipstream now for Pekář, as he's breaking the toe behind Hulm, staying on the line, and Adam Konopka now making a move on Pekář. It seems that Pekář is letting Konopka by, but Konopka doesn't want just one place, he wants both of them, and so he takes them. Adam Konopka ahead of Michael Hulm as well. Wonderful stuff from the local driver, who now is coming up to second place. to be able to start chasing the race leader. Is Martin Kadlecik going to be beaten for the first time this year, or does he have the measure simply on everyone else? We did see some serious pace from Adam Konopka earlier on this weekend, although the best drivers this weekend managed to do laps under 2:26. Ooh, and we've got a mistake from Konopka. He was a little wider on the exit of 3. Kicking some dust up in the air, but still remaining on the move and maintaining his momentum for now. Turning right, Martin Kadlecik, there he goes, with quite some gap. It was as near as makes no difference, 3 seconds across the line the last time. The question is, how fast is everyone else now through this lap? Martin Kadlecik 2:26.5, which is for now the fastest lap of the race, while Adam Konopka did 2:27.4 on the previous lap, but that was the one where he was still stuck behind the other Clios and fighting with them. So once he gets into free air, or let's say clean air, and an empty track ahead of him, he will be able to actually choose his own pace. He still is under pressure. He still has to look into the rearview mirrors and defend his position, so it's not really as straightforward as he would like. Like, for example, now when he's having to go defensive into the final corner, but still managing a very tidy and neat racing line through there. Making our way around the final corner and back on the start and finish straight we go with 17.5 minutes left on the clock. So we've done 3 laps. 2:26.9 for Kadlecik, 2:27.5 for Konopka, so he's losing further still, 4 seconds between him and the race leader. 5-second penalty for car number 7 for jumping the start, which is Nick Stefancic. Nick Stefancic will get a penalty for a false start. In the meantime, Michael Hulm still keeping a close toe behind Konopka, not really letting him away. Slipstreaming past the day-glow yellow Clio towards the end of the first sector of lap 4. Hard under braking we go down the hill. Big lock-up from Konopka. This is going to cost him later on in this race, because this is taking the crucial life out of his front tire. And if he's just flat spotted the tire, he might find it yet more difficult in every further corner. Further lock-ups. This time it seemed like the rear tire lock-up, which is the sort of usual stuff, so nothing to worry about that much. It's a front-wheel drive car, so basically the front wheels are asked to do all of the tasks. The steering, the braking, they're responsible for the traction, while the rear axle is basically just hanging around, of course helping the braking, but more of the bias is anyway on the front. The engine's in the front, of course, and the rear of the car is rather light, so under braking most of the load is on the front anyway, so the front tires are the ones taking the most battering. It's not like Formula 1 where you have got front limited or rear limited circuits. With cup racing, with front wheel drive cars, it's always the front axle that's under more load, because it simply has to do all the work. So if you look up the rears, it's not so much of an issue. If you look up the fronts, you might find yourself in basically in a pit, and with every single lap you just dig it deeper and deeper. 15 minutes left, so we've done the first 10. And it's been a great race so far, even though the race leader has been gaining gradually. 5.5 seconds between Kadlecik and Konopka across the line the last time out. Further lockups for Konopka. This is not his favorite corner, it seems. And it's just costing him tyre life. And of course, potential for the rest of the race, which will now in turn make it ever harder and harder for him to actually keep up with Kadlecik, not mentioning any chances of actually closing the gap right down and fighting for the home victory. On the other hand, Michael Hulm just patiently staying close behind in third. There is Stefancic now opening the fight on Tomáš Pekas in the Mark V class, but we have to bear in mind that Stefancic will then be, let's say, loaded with a 5-second penalty at the end of the race. So if he overtakes Pekas, he then has to make up a 5-second gap before the race ends to be able to hold on to that victory. That's what the false start is going to cost him. We have just entered the second half of the race as the clock is ticking down to 12 minutes. Stefancic on the move. He's at least having a look down the inside on Pekas. But this is the fast right-hander. That is turn 2. And through there it's usually not even possible to go side by side. If so, both of the drivers have actually got to give up something, otherwise at least one of them will end up off the road. Rear locking into this right-hander. That's what we always see. 5.9 between Kadlecik and Konopka the last time out across the line. Hulm under 1 second behind Adam. Now towards the final corner, Konopka still holding on to second. Kadlecik already gone. So there they are, making their way around the final corner once again. And back onto the start and finish straight we go. Across the line with 10 minutes left to go. This should give us about 4, theoretically even 5 laps. Because really with the Clios we're managing lap times under 2:30 quite easily, even in the race pace. There is Szabolcs Lantos, and these are further positions, and look at that, Michał Primožič is then back ahead of Henrik Seibel. So these two once again enjoying wonderful fights like in the yesterday's race, and because the fights further up front are still undecided but also sort of conserved for now, there's not much going on in them. we may now switch to these ones. Well, I'm in the one towards the back between Primožič and Seibel, but for now we're back with Štefančič and Pekář, because Štefančič is really close behind Tomáš. Again, hard under braking. In the meantime, Adam Konopka is actually making a break from Michael Hulm, and it seems that he's been able to extend his gap. On the other hand, Štefančič is still really close to Pekář, and what is going on between Primožič and Seibel? They're also very close to one another, and so are Malinkovský and Fekete. Also just 0.4 of a second between them. There they are. There is Ondrej Fekete. Look at that. He's right on the tail of David Malinkovský. It's that animal car, the yellow car with the teeth and the entire jaw up front. So an aggressive looking car, which is now actually going to have to defend from the local driver Ondrej Fekete, who definitely wants to get himself into the top 10 in front of the home crowd, and he's doing just that now. Good move from Ondrej Fekete for 10th. The car number 888. Malinkovský trying actually to get back ahead, but he was cut off on the outside of the track. And not so long ago, Malinkovský was actually ahead of Primožič and Seibel, but he is not anymore. Meanwhile, Martin Karlečík has already dropped his pace a little bit, because he simply doesn't need to be going all flat out anymore. He's just cruising home. 2:27.5. Konopka was actually a tiny little bit faster on the previous lap, but only by about 0.2 of a second, which isn't really much, considering that Karlečík is enjoying over 6 seconds of a lead. So he's just trying to play it safe now, and he's enjoying yet another dominant race so far. In the meantime, Konopka lost his gap to to Michael Hulm, and Konopka is now coming under pressure from the young German. Making their way around the final corner, the Steibel Motorsport driver in his blue Clio, now glued onto the yellow one as we go across the line once again with just over 5 minutes left. So 3 laps to go. 3 laps remaining in this race, and Fekete under hard pressure from David Malinkovský. Another wonderful fight for P10. So we're actually following multiple fights up and down the field. Wonderful race now. Yes, the race leader might be gone by a big margin, but look at this. This is for P10. And it's as interesting as it will get, this race. So Malinkovský now around the outside on the local driver, on Ondrej Fekete. They're running side by side, but Ondrej Fekete using the inside line to his advantage and staying ahead of Malinkovský. Also Primožič fighting Seibel. Maybe the other way around rather. Well, they already had a full second between them across the line the last time out. Half a second between Konopka and Hulm. And if anything, then Primožič is actually fighting towards the front, and he has been reeling in Ivan Mandic, and he's just robbed him of 7th place. So Miha Primožič, he's just taken another victim of his charge. This is the fight for second between Konopka and Hulm. But we have got a wonderful fight for 7th, which is done for now. Primožič up to 7th and demoting Mandic a little further back. Mandic coming then under pressure from Henrik Seibel. That means that Primožič and Seibel have been fighting through the field together. They've already got Malinkovsky, who is now even behind Fekete. 7.5 seconds between Kadlecik and Konopka across the line about 5 kilometers ago. What is it going to be now? And yes, the pace dropped. Kadlecik did 2:27.6 on the previous lap compared to the fastest lap of the race, 2:26.5, more than a second slower than that. But Konopka did 2:28.7 on the previous lap. What are they going to do now as they are coming across the line? In the meantime, watching this fight, Mandic trying to follow behind Primožič, but Primožič has already taken his 7th place. What is Henrik Seibel going to do about that? They're also now coming across the line onto the penultimate lap of the race. And there is another fight between Fekete and Malinkovsky. Malinkovsky very unhappy about losing the spot inside the top 10. But through the process, he's giving Ondrej Fekete the run for his money and also the chance to actually put on a great show for the home fans this morning before the main event comes up a little later after the lunch break, and that of course will be the GT Sprint, which we're very much looking forward to. Hulm still shadowing Konopka. It seems as though Konopka stopped locking up the fronts and still maintaining a rather good pace. This is going to go down to the wire, down to the last meters of the race, probably. Martin Kadlecik currently cruising home. Henrik Seibel already right on the back of Ivan Mandic. This is the fight for 8th place overall and P5 in the Mark V class. By the way, there is also a fight between Dejan Robida and Radoslav Obertal for 12th. So basically, pretty much everybody apart from the leader, from Martin Kadlecik, everybody is fighting for places. Less than a minute away from home. It's just a great story. Great stuff in the Renault Clio race. Yes, it might not be as fast and as heavily entered and therefore maybe as dramatic as the GT race, but still it has a lot to offer. We've got a fight for 2nd overall on our hands, just as Martin Kadlecik comes onto the final one. He crosses the line. This is the last lap of the race. Martin Kadlecik enjoying 7 seconds of a lead, so just cruising home, choosing his own pace. Behind him, there is still a fierce fight for 2nd. Konopka and Hulm still undecided behind them. Bekas has already gained quite a lot on Stefancic, 1.7 seconds between them, so that fight seems to be decided for now at least. Then Lantos in P6, pretty much in the no man's land, away from everyone else. But Primožič just ahead of Mandic, who's just ahead of Seibel. And then Fekete just ahead of Malinkovsky. And Robida only just ahead of Obertal. So the time is up. But what is going to be the final order in this race? Let's not forget that Nick Stefancic will be handed a 5-second penalty when the race ends, but he's currently having over 6 seconds to Szabolcs Lantos, which would mean that he would be able to keep his 5th place overall and 2nd in the class. Further lockups, that's the rear tyres, remember. Ulm having a look down the inside, just trying to unnerve Adam Konopka, which is probably successful to some extent, but still Konopka staying ahead. He did choose wider line through the left-hander, but it made no difference to the fight in the end. Across the hill we go. And there we go, this wonderful angle into the left-hander. Michael Hulm trying to make his racing line as straight as possible, but this is the race leader, absolutely undisputed. He's already won 9 out of 9 and he's on course to make it 10 out of 10. I think I did use exactly the same words yesterday, but what else is there to say about Martin Kadlecik? He's been absolutely dominant all season long, and he is going to make it 10 out of 10. Martin Kadlecik victorious yet again. He had plenty of measure against the rest of the pack. Adam Konopka scoring his best result so far in 2nd on his home soil. Wonderful, wonderful stuff for the Slovakian driver, but this is a fight that's still raging on. Miha Primožič having to defend hard from Ivan Mandic. This is for 7th overall. Slipstreaming battle towards the checkered flag. Miha Primožič will prevail. So Ivan Mandic coming home 8th from Henrik Seibel. He's 9th from Ondrej Fekete. Another Slovakian success on the home soil. Ondrej Fekete winning his own respective fight against David Malinkovsky. So great fight, great stuff from Ondrej as well. And success and happiness for Slovakia in this home event, even though it's a Czech driver, Martin Kadlecik, who has been dominant once again, even here in Slovakia, and he will therefore come to the season finale in 3 weeks' time in Brno as the confirmed champion already. Martin Kadlecik becoming this season's Renault Clio Cup champion. So is Tomáš Pekář in the Mark V class. So both of the standings leaders confirming their position in both of the races this weekend and winning both of them, which means not giving any chance to anyone else. So to Brno we will already come with the champions known. Even despite that, I'm very, very sure it is going to be a good racing weekend once again, with all of the classes meeting up back together for the season finale. And we will still see a lot of great racing action. Martin Kadlecik scoring 10th victory of the season ahead of Adam Konopka, who is coming to take his best result of the season on his home soil, confirming his improvement, confirming that, yeah, as you mentioned, this is the track I already know, and I know it quite a lot. All the other ones are new for me, and it simply shows. And yes, it does. Adam Konopka, once he can put his gained experience to use, he does show serious pace. He, again, didn't have the best of starts, but then fought through the field once again, like yesterday. But he is making it one better in the Sunday's race and coming home in 2nd. Constantly under huge pressure from Michael Hulm all through the race. So that 2nd place is just going to taste even sweeter. That's the Mark IVs. Mark V Clios, we've got Tomáš Pekář winning from Nick Stefancic, and even with the penalty applied, he will keep his position. Szabolcs Lantos 3rd from Miha Primožič, Ivan Mandic, Henrik Seibel, Ondrej Fekete, David Malinkovsky, Dejan Robita, and Radoslav Obertal. We have had quite a lot of fights. The race has been eventful. Luckily, we didn't have any major crash, not even a minor one. So anything like yesterday, and that's just great to see. So this is the result of race number 2 of the Renault Clio Cup here in Slovakia, and we simply cannot wait for the next event in Brno and for the season finale also of the Renault Clio Cup. But that's not all of it for the for Sunday's program. Of course, we're now going to make a lunch break, a little longer one, and we'll be back in about 2 hours. Yes, it should be about 13:45, a quarter to 2 about. We've already got a slight delay, but that should get evened out during the lunch break, but we'll see. Simply be ready back with, quarter to 2, and we will be back with the best of the best, and that will be the second GT sprint of the weekend. But until then, it is a very warm goodbye.